You're going to love these Karen stories today, especially our title story. Here's the first one.
Neighbor kept parking on my property, so I had him towed. Posted by Jellikai 2020. Backstory. I'm a single mother of 2 teenage boys, and I live in a nice, quiet neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Every house on this street has a garage, and I'm the only one that has a single car and parks in my garage. Almost every house on this street is a family home with at least 3 cars, but most have more. Some will park in their driveway and some will park on the street. It's never been a problem since everyone is considerate on how they park, and no one has ever had an issue with getting in or out of the street. In addition, I tend to keep to myself. I'm not antisocial, and I wave and say hello to my neighbors when I come and go from my home, but usually when I get home, I stay home. So, I say all of this to give you an idea that I'm a homebody, and my neighbors pretty much know that when I get home, I stay home. About 6 months ago, the house to my right was sold to a larger family that consisted of dad, mom, and 3 teenagers. The day they started moving in, I made it a point to go over to the edge of the property to wave and greet them in order to welcome them to the neighborhood. They were friendly, and I was happy to have such nice people move in next door. Also note, this family used their garage for storage and thus parked their 4 cars in the driveway. I didn't know it at the time, but their youngest son was just months away from his 16th birthday. Now that you have a little information, on to the story. The players. Me is me, ND is entitled neighbor dad, NS is entitled neighbor son, and NM is entitled neighbor mom, and NP is the poor nice police officer. Today is Monday afternoon, and this story began last Tuesday. Around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, I received a knock on the door, and it was ND. Following is our conversation. Good evening, how are you? I talk back through the screen door and say, we're okay. I'm sorry I can't open the door, but my youngest came home from school with a sore throat today, and so I'm not sure what's going on with him. How are you, and how can I help? Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it isn't anything serious. We're okay. My son just turned 16 a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you saw the new truck we bought him. Yes, I did. It's such a pretty truck and big. Does he like it? Yes, he does. It's what he wanted, so we got it for him. It is very big, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Let's take a brief pause here and understand that when I say this truck is very big, it is very big. It's an F-350. I personally think it's too much of a vehicle for a kid learning to drive, but it's not my money, so to each their own. I don't understand. We've been having complaints from some of the other neighbors that his truck is so big that they can't get around it when they are driving through, and we're afraid that it might get sideswiped if he continues to park it in the street. Yeah, I've had some intense moments trying to get around it myself, but I'm sure he'll get better at parking as he gets more experienced. I'm not sure what this has to do with me. I haven't complained. Oh, I know you haven't complained, which is why I was going to ask if he could use your driveway to park since you don't use it. I'm very stunned at this and say, I do use my driveway when I leave and come home. I can't get to my garage without using my driveway. Besides, I have issues with depth perception, and your son's truck is so big, it will take up most of my driveway, and I don't want to be responsible for any damage that might happen while it's on my property. Well, we'll make sure that he parks it so that it will allow you to come and go without any issues. That isn't possible. The only way he can park to allow me to get around him is if he parks it halfway on my lawn, and that wouldn't work because then he would damage my lawn. If you're concerned about his truck getting damaged, then why don't you let him park in your driveway and then one of your other smaller cars can park in the street? We've already discussed that, and we would have to park 2 cars in the street in order for him to use the driveway. It would be very easy for him to park in your driveway, and I can assure you that it will not be an inconvenience to you. You don't even use your driveway. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not going to be responsible for his vehicle on my property, and I need to be able to come and go without worrying about someone else's property. The entitled dad, very upset at this point, says, You're not being very neighborly. I thought you were a nice woman. You don't use your driveway, and this would benefit the whole neighborhood. I'm losing my temper at this point and say, Listen, I told you no, and I do use my driveway every time I pull into my garage and every time I leave. I'm sorry you don't have enough parking for all your vehicles. I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's not my problem that you decided to buy a vehicle that didn't fit your property. Now, while I also find it irritating to try and navigate the road with that truck in the way, it is public parking, and so I deal with it. I will not have anyone else's vehicle parking on my property. Now, if you don't mind, I have a sick kid and I need to get back to him. Have a good day. With that, I closed the door and then looked out the peephole and saw him give me the bird before he turned to leave. I just shook my head and had to take a moment to understand that I actually just had that conversation. I then loaded my son up in the car and left to take him to minor emergency to get him checked out. All tests came back negative, and I was told he probably had a run-of-the-mill virus and to keep him home and do self-care. I was told to bring him in if he got worse, but not to worry. I went to work the next day and told my coworkers the story of my neighbor's request, and they were shocked. I had one coworker suggest that I send an email to my HOA to explain what happened just to get it on record because it was such an odd request. I took her advice and typed up an email that day when I was at lunch, and I sent it. For those who want to know, it was just an FYI email, not a complaint email. It basically stated that my neighbor made a request to park on my property, and when I declined, he got mad at me and I wanted it on record just in case anything ever happens. So very glad I did. So, Friday comes and my youngest son has been homesick since Tuesday afternoon. When I got home Friday evening, I checked him and he'd begun to run a fever and was complaining of several other things. I'd been doing self-care with him since Tuesday and he didn't appear to be getting any better. Around 7 p.m., I decided to take him back to minor emergency and loaded him up in the car. I opened my garage door, and I was absolutely shocked to see that very big F-350 sitting in my driveway, blocking me. I can't describe to you how angry I was to see that vehicle sitting there. Now, before anyone starts asking me how I didn't know it was in my driveway, it's because my street is very busy and cars are coming and going all the time. Unless someone knocks on my door, I don't bother watching every vehicle that drives up and down the street. The only window that can see my driveway are the ones in my kitchen, and I keep those curtains drawn and never look out of them. So, I get out of my car and stomp over to my neighbor's house and bang on their door. Entitled Mom answers the door, and this is the conversation. Irritated and kind of angry, she says, "Can I help you? You're interrupting our dinner. Your son is parked in my driveway after I told your husband he couldn't. I need to take my son to minor emergency, and that truck is blocking me in." It's at this time the entitled dad walks up behind the entitled mom and proceeds to talk. "He isn't blocking you in. You can get around him." "No, I can't. You need to move that truck or I'm going to call the police and a tow truck. I need to get my son in to see a doctor." Entitled dad turns to call for his son and then turns back to me. "He's not blocking you, but I will have him move it." "It doesn't matter whether you believe he's blocking me in or not. He is not allowed to park in my driveway. No one is allowed to park in my driveway, and if I find an unauthorized vehicle parked in my driveway again, I'm not going to bother to knock on your door. I'm going to have it towed." It was at this time I saw the son arrive at the door with his keys in his hands, and I turned to leave and head to my car to wait for him to move it, and I heard him call me that famous B word every woman's heard at least once in her life. I ignored him and headed to my car and watched as he got in, and after some effort, finally was able to back out of my driveway and parked his truck in the street a little way down the road. I was able to leave and take my son to minor emergency, where, as we waited for several hours to be seen, I shot off another email to my HOA about what just happened. I want to advise the HOA had already responded the day before that they received my email, made note of it, and advised my property was on my own and I could give or deny access to it as I wish. It was this email string that I responded to while waiting for my kid to be seen. Again, all tests administered to my son came back negative, and I was told it was a run-of-the-mill virus and he would be fine. The virus just had to run its course. I took him home and called it a day. Saturday evening, my oldest started complaining of a sore throat, and I was starting to feel poorly myself. My youngest appeared to be getting better, so I figured that whatever he had, we were getting, so we stayed in all day Saturday and Sunday. Sunday evening at about 5:30, my oldest son spiked a fever, and while it came down a little, it didn't come down enough, so I loaded him in the car and off to minor emergency we went. The only one I could find that was open on Sunday at this time was on the other side of town, so I had to drive 20 minutes just to get there, and we ended up waiting for 3 hours to just get in the door, and then another 45 minutes till we saw the doctor. After a few more hours and all of his tests come back negative, the doctor did state that she could hear some wheezing in his lungs, and so she prescribed an inhaler for him to help him, but basically told me the same thing, that he has a run-of-the-mill virus and to let it run its course. I had to drive even further to the only 24-hour pharmacy available to pick up the inhaler, and we did not get back to the house until almost midnight. Let me set the scene for you. My son is half asleep in the passenger seat and complaining that he just wants to go home, and I'm exhausted and feeling drained and having coughing fits myself. I'm just looking forward to going to bed when I round the corner and saw that truck sitting in my driveway. I couldn't even pull in because he was blocking me, and I also noticed that he was parked partially on my lawn. I was so mad that I could hardly see straight. I Googled and found a 24-hour tow truck service and explained that I had an unauthorized vehicle on my property that I needed towing. The woman said it would be about 30 minutes before they could get a truck there, and I said that was fine. In the meantime, I walked my kid to the house and put him to bed, and then quickly went outside and took a picture from the street to show how much of the driveway he was taking and that he was also parked on my lawn. I couldn't understand why they would park in my driveway again after I had told them no, and the only thing I could come up with is that since there had been no activity at my house for hours, that my neighbors probably assumed I was in for the night and wouldn't notice the truck in my driveway. And this is pure speculation, but it's normal for me to be in for the night, especially after 6 p.m. I don't know if they missed me leaving or just saw me leave, but figured I was home, but it doesn't really matter because I told them they couldn't park on my property. It was about 12:30 a.m. when the tow truck arrived, and I half expected my neighbors to come running, but there wasn't any activity from them, and the driver left with the truck without incident. I went in, shot off another email to my HOA, along with pictures and an explanation that I had towed the vehicle, and then went to bed. At 6 a.m. this morning, I woke up to someone banging loudly and rapidly on my door. I didn't have to look. I knew who it was. I grabbed my phone, hit the video record button. Before I opened the door, I looked through the peephole and saw entitled Dad and his son at my door. I opened the door, and following is the conversation. Very angry and yelling, entitled Dad says, "Where is the truck?" Me, as calmly as I could state while coughing, "It was towed. You can call such and such company to make arrangements to get it back." "You didn't have the right to tow it. You're going to pay to get it back." "I had every right to tow an unauthorized vehicle on my property. I told you not to park on my property, and you did it anyways. It blocked me from getting in my driveway last night." "I told you I was going to have it towed after the last time you parked without my permission, and I won't be paying anything to get it back." "You stole my truck, you F&B, and I'm calling the police. I'm going to sue you." Me, having enough of this, "Go ahead. In the meantime, I'm sick, and I'm going back to bed." I closed the door and stood there for a moment. I looked out the peephole, and they were still there. Entitled Dad started banging and was also ringing my doorbell non-stop. He knocked and rang my doorbell for another 4 minutes before he gave up. I'm still recording all of this, and I didn't turn off the video until he was gone. I turned and saw my kids standing there. The noise had gotten them up, and I just advised that if they were still feeling ill, to just go back to bed because that's where I was going. Now, I will honestly say that I didn't think he would call the police, but he did. It was about a half an hour, and I really wasn't looking at the clock, that I heard a doorbell ring. I got up and I looked through the peephole, and a police officer was there. I opened the door and had the following conversation. "Good morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you, but we had a report from your neighbor. He's stating that you stole his son's truck by having it towed from the street, and we need to talk to you about this issue." Good morning, officer. My neighbor's only telling you half the story. I had his truck towed this morning from my driveway when I returned home from minor emergency. I couldn't get into my driveway, and I've already told him twice that him and his family can't park on my property. This issue started last week, and I have emails to my HOA, pictures of his truck parked in my driveway this morning, and a video of my neighbor's visit this morning where he called me names and told me he was going to sue me and call the police. I can show you if you'd like. Yes, so you're saying that the truck in question was on your property without your permission and that you had it towed? Yes, last Tuesday he asked if I would allow his son to park in my driveway. I told him no, and he got mad and flipped me off before leaving. Then Friday evening, when I was leaving, I discovered his son had parked in my driveway and I couldn't leave my garage. I went over and demanded that they move the vehicle, and I told them at that time that I would have their truck towed if they parked on my property again. I came home late this morning and the truck was in my driveway, so I had it towed. I just want to confirm that you're saying that it wasn't parked on the street, but in your driveway, and you have proof of this? Yes, sir. If you'll give me a minute, I'll print off the emails that I sent to the HOA that documents the issues, and I'll also show you the picture and the video as well. With this, the police officer said that he would wait for me to print everything off. Once I got the emails printed, I then returned to the door, opened my Photos app to the officer to show the truck in my driveway, time-stamped, handed my phone and printed emails to him. After looking at the photo where you could clearly see my house in the background, the truck blocking the entrance, and that it was partially on my lawn, the officer then read the printouts. He handed my phone back to me and asked me to open the video that I had referenced while he went over to the lawn to look. I watched him look at the area and then take a few photos. I could see my neighbor and his whole family standing in their driveway, watching me and the police officer. Police officer returned and I handed him back my phone with the video ready, and he watched it. After he finished watching the video, we had the following exchange. "I'm going to need a copy of that photo and video for my file. If I provided you with an email, would you be able to send it to me?" "Yes, sir, no problem." I have enough information for my files to determine that the vehicle was not on public property and was, in fact, on your property. I've made a note that you did not get permission for the vehicle to be parked on the property. Based on the emails you gave me with the dates and time, it appears you did, in fact, advise your neighbor not to park on your property. Would you like to file a trespassing report for this incident? Oh, absolutely. I can see you're not feeling well. You can either file with me now or you can go online. He gets his business card out, writes on it, and then hands it to me. Here's my business card with my email address that you need to use to send me your photo and video, and the case number is on the card as well. Do you want to file with me now? Honestly, I'm exhausted and I'd prefer to file online later. Okay, reference this case number when you email your evidence and file the online report. Also reference my name in on the report. One more thing. I saw in the video where the entitled dad stated he was going to sue you for having the truck towed. He can sue you if he wants, and I would advise that you keep all of the evidence you provided me with today along with the case number I just gave you. Give it a few days and you can request a copy of the report, and you'll want to keep that as well. If you decide to file an online report, you'll need to keep a copy of that as well. I'm going to go talk to the father now, and sorry to have bothered you. Thank you, officer. Look, I'm sorry that you had to come out. Have a good day, ma'am. Get some rest. With that, I closed the door and went back to bed. However, I am so mad that I didn't get any sleep. A few hours ago, I sent off my photo, video, and another copy of the HOA emails to the email address the police officer gave me, and then saved all of that information just in case. I also filed a trespassing report online. I then sat down and started typing this story. Not sure where this is going to go, but I am going to see it through. I know that I'm going to get a lot of pushback from people saying that I should have just knocked on their door and had them move the truck, but I feel that I was right to have the truck towed. I'd already told them twice not to park on my property, and it didn't stop. So this was the consequence. I'll post an update later if there's anything that comes in my report, or if the dad does actually follow up on his threat and sue me.
Entitled coworker finally got his due, posted by egrant03. 5 or more years ago, I worked in an office with a coworker, EC entitled coworker, that always one-upped you. If you had good news, he had better news. If you had a crappy weekend, it was nothing compared to his. A coworker came in looking distraught, and we finally coaxed it out of her that her mom was recently diagnosed with malignant breast cancer. Entitled coworker overheard, and suddenly his dad was diagnosed with another kind of cancer and a heart attack on the same day. If looks could have killed, he would have melted through the floor. A bunch of people went to HR after that, but in true HR style, he was too important, we can't prove it's false, blah 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 blah. Nothing ever happened. We knew he was full of it, and there was no way half the stuff he said was true, but it wore you down. About 5 months later, we were talking about our weekends on Monday. I casually mentioned that my nephew took state in both grade and weight in a recent wrestling tournament. Who shall be overhearing? But entitled coworker. He swoops in and says, "My nephew has plenty of wrestling medals. I bet he's not as good as mine. What's his name? I want to pull up his ranking." I gave him his name because the entitled coworker had jumped with both feet before I could tell my other coworkers that he's been nationally ranked since he was 6 for both grade and weight class. Yeah, I also didn't say that he'd recently accepted a prestigious invitation to wrestle for an international wrestling club with a number of Olympians having come from the program. Winning state was a pre-qualifier to the program, but everyone knew he would get it done. I didn't know they posted stats for 4th graders online, but sure enough, he pulled them up on the office computer. It only took a minute before he closed the window and tried to change the subject. A small crowd had gathered at this point, so I grabbed his keyboard and with Control, Shift, and T, I reopened the window promptly. I don't know enough about wrestling stats to tell you how good he was, but others apparently did and were freaking out about his stats. I knew he was good, but was apparently a savant or something. Lest we forget, people then started asking about entitled coworker's nephew and his stats. EC was floundering and trying his best to backpedal, but no one would let him. We searched with his last name and got no one that it could be. EC then started saying that it was his nephew on the other side. EC had bragged about being related to the governor, so we knew what name to search, and still, no one the right age range was to be his nephew. Suddenly, EC yelled that he was in 2nd grade, so it wasn't online. My nephew's stats were online from first grade, so that was BS. Next came, he lives in another state. But that didn't matter, as he was quickly shown wrestlers from other states, clubs and leagues, and even genders. EC's face was turning every shade of red before he finally stormed away, yelling something about harassment and going to HR. HR did reach out, but we pointed out the blatant hypocrisy when others filed complaints about him. A strongly worded email about unity, being a team player, and respect in the workplace was sent around, that everyone ignored. I stayed there another 10 or so months before I moved. Entitled coworker still tried to insert himself into conversations and to one-up everyone, but all it took was someone saying, "How did your nephew do in wrestling this weekend?" And he shut up. Posted by No Chrysler for me. In the past, I've made posts about my jerk of a brother, but this time, something else happened. I decided to go camping again for the first time this year because of spring break, though I only got the weekend to go. But it was just enough for me to unwind. My brother didn't follow me like he used to. I think I've finally gotten him to understand that screwing with me is just not worth it anymore after he drank that growler full of laxative spiked beer that he stole from me last year. So the drama from him has not been as bad for the past few months. Though he's still an entitled jerk, and I've got plenty of things to tell about him and his antics from the months that I wasn't posting, well, I figured my worries about camping trouble were over. But no, I had to deal with a lunatic, Karen. I'd already spent one night at my campsite, and I was loving the fresh air, and fortunately, rain was minimal. That's the only reason I went. Otherwise, I'd just have stayed home. But I had an itch to scratch to get out and enjoy some mountain air. I was far from alone, as the spaces around me were full of tents, trailers, and RVs. Plenty of people caught the camping bug during spring break, just like I did. I was sitting relaxed in a folding lawn chair and watching Tailspin on my portable DVD player. Yeah, I know it's a cartoon, and it's an old one at that, but I enjoy it since as a kid I used to watch some old tapes of it that a cousin had, and I've owned the DVDs of the complete series for around 10 years now. And I won't deny, I've always had a bit of a crush on the character Rebecca Cunningham. I had headphones on because the other campers were playing music and barbecuing, and they were doing other things. I was just chilling and letting myself mentally zone out with some refreshing cold beer when I got a sudden and hard tap on my shoulder that frankly scared the heck out of me for a second. And then I turned around to see a roughly middle-aged woman in over-tight purple yoga pants with her hands on her hips. She didn't have the Karen haircut, but she did have the bleach blonde hair and the overly large bug-eye sunglasses. I know in this situation, a lot of people will reflexively say, "Can I help you?" But that's just giving an opening to these people to say whatever they want. So my first reaction is to just angrily say, "What? Can't you see I'm trying to relax by myself?" That set her aback for a second. She didn't go away, so I paused the episode I was on and grumpily asked her what she was bothering me about. She spoke up in a matter-of-fact way that sounded like she was trying to be in charge. I guess trying to activate mom mode on a stranger. But I think the unfriendly scowl on my face was enough to show that I'm not exactly friendly. So she just pointed at the portable DVD player and said that she wanted to borrow it and the headphones for her daughter. To make it brief, I said no. And no is a complete sentence. Because I don't know her, I don't know if she'd bring it back, and I certainly don't know if her kid wouldn't damage it. I do actually keep a smaller backup portable DVD player in the camper too, but I wasn't about to let this woman know that. Well, she certainly didn't take to being told off like that well, and then launched into a tirade about how I was a grown man watching cartoons, how they only have one TV in their RV, and her daughter needs something to watch because her kids can't agree on what to watch, so she needs my DVD player. I coldly said that that was not happening, and she actually gave me a loud "why not?" So I pointed out to her that this was really not my problem, and that she just crossed her arms and said that, as an adult, I should be putting kids first. I said that would be the case if I had kids, but her kids are not my kids. I don't know them, and I'm in no way related to them, and therefore I have no obligation to them. So she rolled her eyes and then tried to offer me money for the headphones and the DVD player. Admittedly, I didn't pay much for either of them, but I don't care. I wasn't interested in selling. She only offered $20 for both anyway. So I just told her no and just to kindly leave me alone to watch movies in peace. Then I tried to just sit back down and resume the episode. She didn't take that well and proceeded to try and grab my DVD player right in front of me, like I was just gonna let her walk off with it. I got up and stopped her while saying, "That ain't yours, lady." She proceeded to try and shove me over. Try being the word. She clearly underestimated how heavy I am. I don't look it at all, but I'm around 230 pounds. My body frame just hides it well, and I've been in a few brawls in my life. I ended up grabbing her arms and shoving her back with little effort. She fell on her bum into some wet grass and started yelling that I'd assaulted her while looking around for support. I've seen enough Karen stories to know where this goes if I say nothing. So I yelled, "Yeah, assault on me when you tried to push me over and steal my stuff, and there's plenty of witnesses around us, lady, or did you not notice?" There had already been a few people around us watching the whole altercation, and they'd gone dead quiet while staring. So then I said to everyone, "Check it out. We've got a bona fide Karen here who tried to take my stuff for her precious angel baby. Everybody clap for her." And they did. They actually started clapping. The Karen looked completely humiliated and stormed off screeching that I was a butthole. Her yoga pants butt was all wet from the grass too, which only made it funnier. I kept thinking, "Your butt is grass," as she walked away, but I didn't say it aloud. I tried to resume watching the DVD as I was, but I felt uneasy that the Karen might come back. She snuck up on me rather easily before, and I didn't want to risk that again. So I packed up and went back into my camper to continue watching and drinking inside. Got pretty plastered that night. Stayed at the campsite for one more night, and I didn't see the Karen again until I was leaving Sunday afternoon. I saw her standing by her crappy-looking RV with a large fountain beverage in one hand and a dog leash in the other. It was one of those yappy little fluffball dogs, too. She glared at me as I drove past, and I just waved to her and said, "Bye, Karen," out my window. She threw her drink at my truck, but none of it got in through the window. I could hear her yelling at me, but couldn't really make out a word of it. I'm not sure what goes on in the heads of these people, and I do understand that this could have really gotten a lot worse. Like that nut bar sticking the local ranger on me or something. But I think the public humiliation was enough to make her back off. I can only wonder if the rest of her family is just like her. Glad I didn't meet them. An update. I would like to clarify that the tap that the Karen did on my shoulder was by no means light. She had long fake nails and tapped my shoulder hard like she was on a mission to dig her nails into my skin in rapid succession. And that really ticked me off from the start. We gotta check out the top comment by Domprio that says, "Awesome way to handle Karen. There's nothing wrong with an adult watching cartoons. I watch cartoons all the time and I'm 46. If you like Tailspin, check out DuckTales or Darkwing Duck. There's a couple other cool cartoons from that generation, like Thundercats and Animaniacs, or a couple that I can think of." Psycho Karen demands my house and sues me. Jail time for her, with updates. Click the video on your screen. You don't want to miss this insane story, and I'll see you there.